Not sure what Mazinger Z is? Don't worry, this is basically the whole show.
Shut your bitch ass up!
So yeah, a real 1970s classic, but we're not talking about that show today. Today we're talking about the more modern, edgy reboot, SHIN MAZINGER Zero. You don't need to know anything except that I highly advise viewer discretion before we go into this. This is the most unhinged thing I think I ever have and most likely ever will talk about on this channel. More so than Shaggy Chaos's butt cheeks. So don't say I didn't warn you. The prologue opens with the destroyed landscape of Earth. In the narrator's words, "The civilization born of human intellect is being wiped out without a trace by a man-made god crowned with the ultimate Z, a demon god with an artificial brain." To those familiar with Mazinger, this is a shocking revelation. It's not that the world doesn't end all the time in the show, but Mazinger itself is usually piloted by the courageous and heroic Koji Kabuto. Then the autonomous Mazinger Z unleashes Breath of Fire to scorch the earth. All of humanity is dead, except for one man. It's Koji. He starts to lament his dark reality, blaming himself for not piloting Mazinger. A mysterious woman answers this call to action. She implores him, asking him if he really could have changed anything. And then she uses Rust Hurricane, another one of Mazinger's iconic moves, to seemingly kill Koji once and for all. He completely dissipates as she watches him with solemn tears. The prologue then ends, and in the next chapter we cut to a dark classroom, with Koji dreaming of his grandpa's first proposition to him. "With Mazinger, you can surpass human limits. You will be superhuman. No, even more than that. You can become god or devil. Not just any god or devil. A god that saves humanity, or a devil that destroys Earth." Koji wakes up screaming and embarrasses himself in front of his entire class. Then after class, he begins to tell Sayaka, his partner in every iteration of the story, that images keep popping up in his head, information he doesn't fully understand. In his head, he sees their first meeting from the original manga, and the moment he transferred to her school. But she seems confused by this, telling him that they've always been in the same school district. And they begin to reminisce about how close they are with each other. But before they're allowed to finish this conversation, Sayaka's dad asks them to return to the Photon Light Institute for urgent business. Then when they arrive, it turns out Koji's grandpa hijacked the lab and started diverting all the energy within to his own sector. They zoom in on the cameras to multiple dismembered corpses, which is not the dark part I was talking about. This is surprisingly not that rare for Mazinger. Like, the original manga is very graphic too, but I digress. Professor Yumi says that the grandpa is demanding that Koji, Sayaka, and Koji's dad enter the lab. This also contradicts Koji's memories. In his mind, his parents died in an experiment, and his grandpa was always a caring person for him. He would never kill innocent people like this. They're left with no choice but to comply with the grandpa's demands and go down to meet him. Before fully entering though, they start to confront their fears. Koji and Sayaka finally confess their love for each other. They're greeted by a funny little helper robot that asks them to follow him, and he brings them over to the completed Mazinger. Koji starts trembling and sweating at the entity that destroyed his previous timeline, when out of the corner of his eye, the little helper robot prepares to kill Sayaka. At the last second, he saves her, but it continues shooting at them. Koji outmaneuvers it, jumps behind it, and responds in kind with a massive punch. His punch is so strong, it dents the machine's chest in a display of abnormal power, and it flies back and breaks in one swoop. Koji is shocked by his own power, and he wonders if Sayaka will be scared of him. But she instead swoons because he's a very awesome hero now. As the lovers bond, they hear a voice out of the corner. Koji's dad emerges out of the darkness. He starts to tease them for being closer than he imagined, but his figure appears distorted. This is where it starts to get way darker than the original Mazinger. Grandpa Juzo was puppeteering his son's head to taunt Koji, and he tosses the head into an empty pit.
"You killed him, didn't you?" "Yeah, I killed him." "So what?"
Koji jumps at him, utilizing his newfound power to try to put this monster down for good. But he's impaled by a robotic limb, and his arm is completely severed. He falls to the floor, coughing up his intestines. And then Grandpa does something so absurd that I can't show you it because The author of this is Freak Bob, but you can probably fill in the gaps in your mind as to what's happening right now. He plans to rule over the world with his new creation, Mazinger, the ultimate testament to his ego. In his eyes, it is the new god that marks the natural end of humanity's evolution, the pinnacle. We can never hope to match this creation. As its eyes shine and it starts up, Koji sees images flashing through his mind, and he grabs his own arm. He declares that this artificial brain will ruin it, and it needs a human pilot to control it. But Grandpa Juzo sees this as an insult to his perfect creation, and in response, he murders Sayaka in one of the grossest manga panels I've ever seen, honestly. And because of that, in a berserk state, Koji chucks his own arm in an ironic fashion like a spear, like his own Rakuto punch, and it flies straight through his grandpa in a violent display, wiping him out. Koji keels over, emotionally exhausted and hopelessly injured, but Mazinger's not going to give him a chance to recover, and it flings him into the air. And you would think that would kill him, but no, Koji is like cracked in this. He turns around midair.
If this monster wants to be a god, then I'll make it a god!
He screams as he manifests a robotic arm of his own in spirit, and smashes its artificial brain. But because of the glass being broken, tentacles from within begin to envelop his body and draw him within. He passes out and awakens within its head as the center of its brain. He swears to protect everyone, but then starts screaming,
I need an enemy!
And what luck. The classic two mechanical beasts from every first battle in Mazinger show up. In their destruction of the city, a small boy's mom is crushed, and buildings catch on fire. One of the heads turns over to supposedly kill the traumatized boy, finishing him alongside his mother, but he's saved by a last-second Rakuto punch, successfully drawing it over to Mazinger, where Koji says,
Chew on this! The storm of the most powerful god in history! Rust Hurricane!
It falls apart, and he punches it to be certain in a frenzy. He maniacally laughs, I saved everyone! But then, we pan to the city, completely destroyed by the Rust Hurricane tornado. Time passes, and only Mazinger Z and Koji remain to fight off onslaughts from the mechanical beasts. In their endless battles with no regard for collateral, it seems they've destroyed everything. Mazinger's mouth uncannily opens, and it consumes the remains of its enemies, evolving. Swamped by enemies, it grows sharp wings, the Cross Grander, and kills them all. One final enemy awaits Mazinger in space, facing in front of Earth. So Koji and Mazinger unleash a final breath of fire to kill it. But because it's in front of Earth, they also burn Earth to a crisp behind it. Koji declares his perfect victory, and yet another world meets its end. The mysterious woman from before despairs, and the world resets again. The next timeline seems more normal. Koji is piloting Mazinger without being insane, alongside Sayaka also piloting and alive in Aphrodite. Everything just seems normal. They go to school, live a normal life, fight Dr. Hell, and Mazinger seems to abide by Koji's will. We get properly introduced to the mysterious woman, Minerva X, and she starts to investigate this new world and its mysterious status quo, being the only one that remembers all previous timelines. Will this be the promised final future where Mazinger doesn't destroy everyone? How many resets will it take to return things to normal? Before we move on to my review of it though, there's one other chapter I'd like to show you. A broadcast begins from Dr. Hell. In this version, he's hacked every screen across the world to send this next message in every language. He says that, as we can expect, his dream is world domination, and it turns out he's broadcasting this from the White House. While this is happening, a dude who looks like Obama, because this was made in 2010, calls Dr. Hell's dream ridiculous, because it is ridiculous. So Dr. Hell blitzes him and grabs his balls. And seeing this, the Secret Service says, "The president's crotch has been taken hostage." And then Dr. Hell says this speech, which I'm just gonna say verbatim.
Have the lot of you been castrated? World domination is a man's dream. A dream that men have continued to hold from the distant past until a mere few decades ago. Alexander the Great, hero of Macedonia. Genghis Khan, champion of the Mongols. Napoleon, the monster of Corsica. Hitler, the genius of Nazi Germany. The gigantic ambition they all dreamed and hoped for, but were unable to fulfill. World domination. The one to achieve this great dream will be I, Dr. Hell.
And then he crushes the president's balls, and the Secret Service says, "No, the president's balls!" So yeah, this manga is absurd, it's violent, it's perverted, it's not going to be for a lot of people. But in spite of all that, I found it really enjoyable. It certainly makes a stronger and faster impression than the other stuff I've seen from the franchise at this point. I just describe it as unfiltered and raw. It's vulgar and the artwork is just really energetic and dark. It's just so fun to read. The action, which really starts to ramp up in the third act, I didn't even get to cover most of it, but it gets really insane. It gets so high scale. At a certain point, it became so overwhelming to read that I had to start checking to make sure I was taking breaths, which is something really rare in manga. And I think that's a testament to just how suspenseful and exciting this thing is. The story in the beginning, because of the time travel angle, feels like you're not making a lot of progress, so you might think maybe it'll fall into a rut. It doesn't, man. It never lingers on one plot point for too long. It just keeps moving constantly in a great way. And another really great thing about it is that the more absurd or out of the ordinary story concepts actually do have pretty good explanations, to the point where this actually feels like one of the more logical super robot stories. Personally, I found a lot of the sexual aspects very off-putting and uncomfortable, to the point where I would say that this series is not a favorite of mine. But in the end, I was able to cope with it and I was able to enjoy it because I am an adult and I can separate that stuff from reality. Another reason for it is you start to notice that this story really is a tribute to Go Nagai, the original author's works. He is one of the most influential, if not maybe the most influential author in manga. Chances are your favorite series is inspired by Mazinger or Devilman, but a lot of people forget that he got his start writing smut, and even in the original Mazinger Z manga, Sayaka was like constantly naked. You start to understand that this series is really trying to take his absurd violence, his absurd sexuality, and just push it and push it and push it. It's taking everything Go Nagai does and cranking it up to 11. It's a story that is meant to be shocking, and when you get used to it, it is a very fun time. That's all I've got for you guys today, though. I'm not done doing Gundam or anything. I just need to read something else every once in a while. Thanks for the support as always. God bless you guys. Peace.